Should pregnant women get vaccinated? The battle for the future of the Republican Party. And award season is here. We're talking Golden Globe nominations and a huge Bridgerton snub. Here's what you need to know. Good morning, this is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Thursday, February 4th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Carlo, good morning.
She made it into the office today. How was that?
It was okay. It was a little icy, and it definitely took me a lot longer than it normally does at 5 in the morning, but I'm here, so.
Well, you're doing the yeoman's work on my behalf. I thank you.
Okay, the federal government is going to be opening its first mass vaccination sites in California as it moves to take a larger role in vaccine deployment under the Biden administration. The first site at Oakland Coliseum aims to do 6,000 shots a day starting February 16th. Meanwhile, an early study of the AstraZeneca vaccine suggesting that it not only protects against infection but also reduces transmission. This has been one of the big outstanding questions with these vaccines. Can you still pass the virus on to somebody else even if you've been vaccinated? So that shot, by the way, still has not been submitted to the FDA for approval, even though it's being used currently in Europe and India. The thinking is it's unlikely to get the go-ahead in the U.S. before April. Do you know why that is? I was reading it's just that their data, the FDA requires, I think, just like stricter data. Yeah,
that's from everything I've read is that it's not that it's not like they're like slow stepping it. It's just they just say it's not ready yet for the FDA. But this is very good news with regard to the AstraZeneca vaccine if that holds up for the reasons that you just mentioned, Jill. Also good news, Dr. Fauci out yesterday saying there have been no, quote, red flags among the 10,000 or so pregnant women who have been vaccinated so far. Pregnant women, recall, they were excluded from the vaccine trials, right? They always are. So this is sort of the first sign that we're getting that there haven't been any adverse reactions to speak of among that cohort. Many of those 10,000 pregnant women, obviously healthcare workers who just said, they're going to sort of take the shot regardless. So this was good news in our household. Becky says that she's probably gonna wait anyway. It doesn't really matter, right? Because we're not going to have access to this thing in the next few months anyway, I don't think. But I think the bottom line here is if you're pregnant, you have this choice, and Fauci is saying, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, look, pregnant women are really encouraged to get the flu vaccine. It's just when you get really sick when you're pregnant, it can be potentially dangerous for the baby. And there have been adverse effects of pregnant women who've gotten COVID. So I guess the thinking is just risk reward in terms of the vaccine. It's good that women who are pregnant are taking it. At least at the very least, we'll have some data and a good sign that so far all things seem to be going well. Meanwhile, on the political front, a proxy war for the future of the Republican Party has been playing out in Washington. House Democrats today are going to force a full vote on whether to strip Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee assignments based on her past embrace of conspiracy theories and calls of violence. She is a freshman congresswoman from Georgia. If you are not familiar with her, so these are some of the things she has endorsed. She has endorsed the execution of top Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi. She's suggested that the Newtown and Parkland school shootings were fake. She once said that a laser beam controlled from space by Jewish bankers was responsible for the California wildfires. She was officially condemned by Republican leadership in a meeting last night, but not punished. And she was also given a standing ovation by half of the Republican House conference, according to reports. She's kind of seen as the extension of Donald Trump right now in the House. At the same time, Liz Cheney, daughter of Dick Cheney, survived an attempt by some House Republicans to strip her of her leadership position. And the reason for that is because she voted to impeach President Trump the second time around, this most recent time. So the bottom line, Republicans trying to, I guess, stand by both Greene and Cheney as they navigate a post-Trump future.
I really struggle with covering this woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I've specifically tried to steer us away from covering her on the podcast until now, just because I don't want to give her any more attention. And also, she's really just not deserving of space in my brain at the moment. This woman, Greene, not Cheney, she's a whack job, right? Straight up. Like she's a whack job. She's got no business being anywhere close to power. But also, Jill, she was elected. Right? She represents her constituents in that district in Georgia. It's not like any of these things she said are new, right? A lot of them have recently been uncovered, but it's not like she got to Washington and started spouting this stuff up. Like, this is who she was, and they elected her as such. Throwing her off committees is really, I think, probably going to do a lot of damage in terms of making her a martyr for this sort of like QAnon wing of the Republican Party right now. But at that point, at the same time, right, there's got to be a line at some point. There's got to be a line in the sand, right? And calling for the execution of your colleagues, right? Nancy Pelosi's her boss. Imagine calling for the execution of your boss. You'd be thrown on the street immediately, and you deserve it, right? Saying that Jewish space lasers are to blame for wildfires, or that 2 of the worst school shootings we've ever had in this country were hoaxes. That's a bridge too far, man. Like, at some point, something's got to give here. She's a straight up racist and an anti-Semite. So just imagine having to work with her, right? Like, what do you talk about at the congressional water cooler with somebody like that?
Look, it's complicated because she was elected.
Right.
But to give her a committee seat just seems
insane.
That seems insane. Did you see, I don't know if anybody out there saw the video of her chasing down David Hogg.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There is a video, it happened a while ago, but it just started to recirculate, of her chasing down David Hogg, the Parkland shooting survivor, who has become kind of this advocate for a change in gun laws.
Right.
First of all, grow up. He was like he's a high school kid or a college kid or whatever at this point, and she's like chasing him down. It's just nothing else, just immature. But it's like so beyond the pale. Basically accusing him of being paid off, and what is this really about? How did you get meetings with senators? It is so loony. Mitch McConnell just came out and basically said, she's loony and this is not what we're about. But where have they been, right? Where have Republicans been for years at this point when these conspiracy theories started to circulate? It's basically, look, right now it is a fight for the Republican Party, the future of the party. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be the party of fiscal conservatives and other Republican principles, or is it the party of Trump, right? And is it a continuation of just kind of all about me, kind of showmanship, that type of things? I don't know. And it's like, do you want, the Democrats are going to probably vote to strip her of the committee seat, but it's like, they shouldn't have to be the ones to do it. It's more powerful if it comes from your own party.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jill. Look, this was the problem with going all in on Donald Trump for Republicans. And, a lot of, we've had this conversation in the past a lot about, Republicans who are like, sort of didn't like him, but voted for him because they like his policies. They like the tax cuts, the judges, whatever. That's the thing about Faustian bargains, right? You can't have just that. It's sort of the whole package. And this was the obvious outcome of that, I think. But to your question, what is the current Republican Party, right? Is it the party of Marjorie Taylor Greene and her space lasers, or is it the party of Liz Cheney or Mitt Romney? Here's a good sort of thought experiment. Who would win a Republican primary right now between Marjorie Taylor Greene and, say, Mitt Romney? My money would be on Greene. And that is a major existential crisis if you're a normal Republican.
Look, we'll see how it plays out. We'll see what happens with the impeachment. But I think what's quite clear is that Donald Trump still has a very big hold on the current Republican Party. So I think that's, if you're going to take away anything from it, it's that. Okay, moving on to some weather news, which, Carlo, I cannot believe you put this in because I know you hate weather stories so much, but it is about to get very, very cold. A blast of Arctic air courtesy of the polar vortex, remember that, bringing sub-zero highs to the Midwest this weekend before it spreads south and east. Based on current forecasts, every single state is going to clock below freezing temps on Monday morning, negative 20s in the upper Midwest, teens in the south. The cold will linger too, probably at least through next week.
I do hate weather stories, but at the same time, it is sort of need to know, right? Everybody needs to know if it's going to be cold or not. And it's going to be cold. It's February. It's cold. By the way, I'm blaming the groundhog. Anything from now on related to the weather, I blame that little rodent.
Puxatawny poor guy.
Poor guy.
Okay, days after General Motors shocked the auto industry with its aggressive timeline for electrification, the German car giant Daimler announced a major restructuring in a move towards zero emissions. Daimler's going to take the Mercedes-Benz name and focus exclusively on battery and self-driving technology for passenger cars. It's going to spin off its truck unit into a separate company called Daimler Trucks, which will continue to work on hydrogen fuel cell power.
This is a big deal, right? We were sort of predicting this kind of thing was going to happen, and lo and behold, here it is. Fuel cell, which we don't talk about a lot. This is a technology that's been people have been saying it's the future for a long time, and it hasn't really come to pass. But they really are making huge progress with it, and a lot of people now think that fuel cell is really the future for trucks and buses, and sort of like big vehicles, because it's much lighter than batteries. It's also faster to refuel, which is one of the other issues currently with battery technology. It's also more expensive, and it's more dangerous, at least currently, because it is hydrogen after all. But look, we said more car companies were going to be doing this. This is fantastic. If you make anything that uses an internal combustion engine and you don't have a plan to transition off of it, you're dead in the water at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a big runner, and I'm sure bikers can relate. There is nothing worse than running and then just a big truck comes next to you starts and you're breathing in their exhaust for however long, or even if you're driving and you're behind a big truck and you're like, or a car that's really old and still has
I hate that
fumes coming out of the back. It's just I think it's going to be expensive for these car makers, but just for our humanity and the environment, it's just so incredibly important.
That is the worst, right? When you're in traffic and there's like a dump truck in front of you, and it's just like the black exhaust is coming out, and you're just like, why is that going into the air and into my lungs? I didn't ask for this.
And you're like, do I open my windows? Do I close my? It's coming in anyway. I don't know what to do.
Right, it's coming in anyway. It's coming in through the vents.
Okay, a Cheddar exclusive now. Representative Maxine Waters, the chair of the House Financial Services Committee, told our colleagues on Cheddar News Wrap last night that she plans to call Keith Gill to testify to Congress, along with the CEO of Robinhood and a rep from GameStop. So Gill is the now famous Reddit day trader who made millions on his GameStop bet. That hearing is scheduled for February 18th. GameStop, by the way, has lost about 80% of those gains that we saw last week. So a huge pullback for GameStop.
And was it you that said the other day that it was like by Robinhood limiting those trades, they actually may have done some of these people a favor because they were buying? Yeah, that's smart. But what a circus this hearing is going to be. Yesterday I said I didn't want to watch it. I think I now will want to watch it just because it's going to be probably pretty good television. But I also like how she said she wants to call the someone from GameStop. Like, what's the CEO of GameStop going to say? Yeah, I don't know. Our stock went up 1,000%. I didn't do anything.
I think the sadness of all of that is so the reason it's so frustrating for me personally, and I know we've talked about this, to watch these types of hearings, whether it's the big tech CEOs or whether it's going to be this. To your point, GameStop has nothing to do with this story, which is the irony, right? Because it's their stock and it's their company. But the fact that she wants to call the person from GameStop, what does that tell you? Is there a maybe lack of understanding about what happened? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here, right? By the way, I even think it's super complicated. I ask my husband hundreds of questions about this every day. I'm like, options, shorts, what's going on? Explain this to me, blah, blah, blah. It's super confusing. But I think if we're confused, lawmakers, it's like just another opportunity for grandstanding. I can't. I can't take it.
Especially right now, it's like, can we just please focus on getting people vaccinated so I can leave the freaking apartment? Please, I just want to go out. I just want to go to a bar and have a drink. I want to go see you, Jill. I haven't seen you in almost a year.
Before you have your baby, Carlo, you need to
Yes,
go to a bar and have like a bender of a night.
Yes, I'm on a timeline here, folks. June 3rd is coming, right? I have a small window of my former life to live here.
Yes, but anyway, it should be interesting, this GameStop stuff, and we will see what winds up happening. Okay, award season is here. Better late than never. Golden Globe nominations are out. Netflix is dominating the race this year. The streamer picked up 48 nominations, including 6 for David Fincher's Mank and another 6 for The Crown. Emily in Paris got a nod for Best TV Series. The hugely popular Bridgerton was shut out. HBO had a strong showing for The Undoing, and HBO Max was recognized for The Flight Attendant. The Globes are going to air February 28th. That's about 2 months before the Oscars. The Best Picture race is still wide open. Your takeaways here.
Emily in Paris for Best TV Series. I mean, Becky hate-watched that show a while back. You know when you ever do that? Like she was explaining this concept to me. Like you watch a show basically to like make fun of it, but you're also getting like secret enjoyment out of it. Anyway, she was watching Emily in Paris, and I sort of caught a little bit of it, and that is some awful trick.
I couldn't even get through it. I watched 10 minutes and I'm like, this is so corny. And I may come back to it because I'm at the end of Netflix. I just finished Bridgerton, which is...
How was that?
Beyond good. It is so good. It is a must watch.
Really?
It is awesome. And it's like diverse.
Like it.
They use...
Is it girly?
What did you say?
Is it girly? Would I like it?
It's a little girly, but Brad Smith from Cheddar, he loved it. He was the one who told me to watch it, and I'm like, well, I didn't know what it really was. It's Shonda Rhimes. It's from Shondaland.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
She executive produced it. It's kind of like a Pride and Prejudice, Downton Abbey type meets Gossip Girl with like a modern twist. It is so good, and they have a diverse cast playing all of these aristocrats. It's like Hamilton-esque in that sense. Yeah. It is a must-see, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, Emily in Paris is the embodiment of my Netflix as the McDonald's of content theorem. But I have to say, Jill, I mean, The Crown, can we just talk about The Crown for 2 seconds? I know no one wants to hear this, but it is so freaking good. I'm on season 3 because I remember you told me to start from the beginning after I watched season 4. So thank you for that because I'm just eating it up. It's just I don't want it to end. It's going to end soon. And I hated Prince Philip, and now I love him again. I'm all over the place with Prince Philip. I don't know what to think about this guy. But back to the Golden Globes, Jill. It's our weirdest award show, and I say that in a loving way, right? Given out by the Hollywood Foreign Press, whoever that is, I don't know who that even is. It's like a bunch of foreign critics. They inexplicably don't even let foreign films compete or shows compete for some reason. But that said, it is almost always a less boring show than the Oscars. So I think we'll see how they do. I think Tina Fey and Amy Poehler are doing it remotely this year. That should be great. They'll be really fun. They're always. 3 of the 5 best directors were women. The nominations were women. Women, so that's cool. A good point. And finally, Morgan Wallen, one of the biggest up-and-coming stars in country music, once again in trouble after TMZ published a video showing him using the N-word as he returned to his house after a night out. His label suspended him. His music's been removed from radio and streaming playlists. Pandora took his catalog offline. Spotify and Apple just took his songs off their popular country playlists. So Wallen's apologized, but if you're wondering why you've heard this name, he is the guy who was yanked from his SNL appearance earlier in the pandemic for breaking COVID protocols. He was eventually allowed back and kind of made a joke of it, but hey. Jill. My spidey senses start tingling when I hear about artists or art getting taken off of streaming platforms. This is sort of controversial and probably deserving of a longer debate than just like a little mention on this podcast. And I'm not talking about Spotify taking like his songs off playlists. Like, I don't think that really matters. But when you do what Pandora's doing and you're actually taking his music entirely off, I just get a little nervous. And there's a broader debate here about, who owns art and who owns media, really, now that everything is in the cloud, right? Now that we stream everything and we don't actually own CDs or VHSs or whatever. And what the line is when it comes to deplatforming artists, right? And again, I'm talking specifically about art. I'm not talking about politicians. I think there's a very important distinction between like this guy getting his music taken off of Pandora versus like Trump getting taken off of Twitter. There's no comparison there. But I didn't like it when HBO temporarily took off Gone with the Wind last summer, if you remember, because of all of its racial baggage. I thought that was a slippery slope. This is different, but I think that this is sort of an important and provocative conversation to have, regardless of this particular situation with Wallen. I just think it's like a really interesting debate to have, and I think it's a debate we're going to be having in the future, right? They did this with R. Kelly, by the way. They took a bunch of his music off the streaming platforms when he was arrested again. So I'm just throwing it out there. It's a little bit.
Well, it's similar, but not the same to the conversation that's happening around social media right now with people like Donald Trump, right? Should he be getting a platform if he's putting out misinformation and hate speech? And if he isn't on there, what about the dictators and authoritarian leaders from other countries, and just regular people who are spewing anti-Semitism and hate speech? And I think you raise a good point. And look, Michael Jackson's music is still on these platforms, I think, right? And Wallen's is not. So it's what's the line, right? I think that's the question, is like, where do you draw the line? What's the barometer? Is there a litmus test here? I'll just keep throwing out all of these cliched words. But I mean, I think you raise a good point, and I don't know the answer, right? I mean, like, you want to send a message that this behavior is not acceptable. At the same time, should these streaming services, I mean, there are private companies, like, it's not a free speech issue. They can do whatever they want. So you can.
It's the specific, not to keep this going, but just it's the specific art thing that I have a problem with. It's our inability to separate art from the artist that I think we have a problem with in this country, that I think a lot of other countries are sort of gotten past. I mean, there's plenty of like brilliant artists in Europe who are terrible human beings, right? But people are sort of able to separate the content that they produce, the art that they make, from them as people. So I don't know. I mean, I'm open to hearing other people's thoughts on this. But he, by the way, his label dropped him, so like he's being punished. And he deserves it, I think.
Right. I mean, I think the punishment at a certain point isn't it up to the public to kind of say, this guy's not for us. I don't want to listen to his music if this is what he's all about. And that dictates whether he's on country playlists, et cetera. It's a great debate, and I think as we have iPhone cameras everywhere, and as we're all just becoming a lot more sensitive about issues surrounding race and hate speech, I think that this is going to come up more and more.
We will have been there first, Jill, as always.
Carlo, trailblazing, leading the discussion. Okay, everybody, that's what you need to know for Thursday, February 4th.
All right, guys, see you tomorrow.